Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Israeli Defense Ministry backtracks on a controversial statement about the Iran nuclear deal. A Palestinian swimmer comes under fire for false accusations against Israel, and Israel gives a big welcome to NBA All-Star Amari Stoudemire. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. The Israeli Defense Ministry is now backtracking on its comparison of the Iranian nuclear deal with the Munich Agreement, although U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is standing firm on how Washington has been dealing with Tehran. We never intended to draw such comparisons, neither on a historical level nor on a personal level, and apologize if it was misinterpreted. That's the latest from Israel's Ministry of Defense following its statement last Friday, drawing strong parallels between the Iran nuclear deal and the appeasement policy adopted by British Prime Minister Joseph Chamberlain, who signed the notorious 1938 Munich Agreement with Adolf Hitler. The Israeli press release explained that defense officials felt the clarification was necessary because its previous statement had been grossly misinterpreted by the media. After stressing that the state of Israel and the Israeli security apparatus will continue to work in close cooperation with the United States, the ministry then reiterated Jerusalem's deep concern not only over the nuclear pact with Iran, but continued action by the Iranian regime threatening Israel's existence. The statement pointed to the rogue nation's accelerated development of ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads, in contravention of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. Other incidents that were cited included the recent official military parade in Tehran, when ballistic missiles were displayed bearing the words "Wipe Israel Out," and the holding of yet another caricatures competition denying the Holocaust just last January. The statement also made note of Iran's unabated assistance to proxy terror organizations such as Hamas and Hezbollah, which are dedicated to attacking Jewish and Israeli targets throughout the world. The ministry issued its initial statement last Friday to dispute an announcement from U.S. President Barack Obama that Israel had acknowledged that the Iran nuclear pact is working exactly as planned.
You'll recall that there were all these horror stories about how Iran was going to cheat and this wasn't going to work, and Iran was going to get $150 billion to finance terrorism and all these kinds of scenarios, and none of them have come to pass. And it's not just the assessment of our intelligence community, it's the assessment of the Israeli military and intelligence community, the country that was most opposed to this deal, that acknowledges this has been a game changer and that Iran has abided by the deal and that they no longer have the sort of short-term breakout capacity that would allow them to develop nuclear weapons.
In related developments, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is insisting that the $400 million paid to the Iranian government at the time the nuclear deal was finalized was an unrelated occurrence. He flatly denied any connection between the cash and an additional $1.3 billion interest payment with the release of Americans being held captive by the hardline Islamic Republic. Speaking to reporters amid his trip to Buenos Aires, Kerry emphasized that it's not U.S. policy to pay nor negotiate ransoms.
First of all, the United States of America does not pay ransom and does not negotiate ransoms with any country. We never have, and we're not doing that now. It's not our policy. That's number one. Number two, this story is not a new story. This was announced by the President of the United States himself at the very time that this transaction and the nuclear deal was being put together, and he made it clear that there was a separate negotiation track, a separate negotiation that happened to come to be settled at the time, which represents a restoration to Iran of its own money.
While the Israeli Olympic team in Rio should be focused on their sporting competitions, political distractions are continuing to surface. Major news outlets are reporting that Palestinian swimmer Mary Al-Atrash is claiming that Israel prevented her from properly training, and that there are no adequate training pools in the West Bank or Gaza. But the Tablet magazine has just published a report disputing the 22-year-old athlete's claims, who hails from the Palestinian town of Beit Sahul near Bethlehem. It turns out there are several Olympic-sized pools in her area, including 4 at the nearby Murad tourist resort. The Israeli government office for coordinating activities in the West Bank usually grants permits to Palestinian athletes so that they can train in Jerusalem. But the office says that Atrash refused to apply for a permit. Despite not having any qualifying athletes this year, the Palestinian Authority was invited to send 1 male and 1 female swimmer to the Olympics by the FINA International Swimming Federation. The Palestinian Authority gained eligibility to participate in the Olympic Games in 1996 and has sent swimmers since 2000. Now, let's take a look at the Israeli delegation, which unfortunately hasn't been faring as well as we hoped in the Olympic Games. Israelis across the world experienced a heartbreakingly narrow loss by judoka Sagi Muki on his bid for the bronze medal in the men's lightweight semifinals. Muki went to Rio as a reigning European champion in the under 73 kilo weight class, but was defeated by his Georgian contender in a runoff for 3rd place. On a more positive note, one of the strongest contenders at the 2016 Games is 19-year-old Jewish-American Katie Ledecky, who's currently considered the best female swimmer on the planet. The record breaker won her first gold medal in the 2012 London Olympics at age 15, and it looks as though she'll likely take home yet another medal from Brazil. Ledecky hails from Maryland, but she told Sports Illustrated that she draws inspiration from her 83-year-old Czech Jewish grandmother Berta, who survived the Holocaust. She says that the stories of her family's losses during the Holocaust have driven her to succeed. Former NBA All-Star Amari Stoudemire has finally taken part in his first press conference since arriving in Israel last week, and he says he's finally realizing a long-awaited dream. The basketball star just signed to play with Hapoel Jerusalem for the next 2 years, and he says the move is an extremely emotional one because he's always wanted to live in the Holy Land.
I retired from the NBA because I played for 14 years, and I wanted to play for a team that had a chance to win a championship in the NBA. There was other teams that were calling, but I didn't want to play for a team that didn't have a chance for a title. So I decided to retire and to bring my talents over to Israel.
Stoudemire has long claimed that he has Jewish roots, which have led him to visit Israel several different times with his family. Stoudemire used to partly own the Hapoel Jerusalem basketball team, but has now sold off his share because he'll be playing for the team. Israeli basketball fans are stoked that the basketball star will be playing in the Jewish state. But Stoudemire says it's highly unlikely that he will end up playing for the Israeli national team, mostly because he's played for the American Dream Team in the past. For now, the top athlete is focused on making sure his family's transition to Jerusalem goes smoothly, and he says he's not very worried about being ready for the upcoming season. Israel is planning to open a streamlined public broadcast authority to replace the current organization IBA. But several major media outlets are alleging the plan is a sign of the government's attempts to control the media. ILTV's Aaron Viner sat down with the former director of Government Press Office, Daniel Seaman, to hear what he has to say about the highly charged issue.
What do you make of these allegations?
Well, it always humors me when people think that the government can control things in Israel. I don't think a government can control in any country, but especially here. I've had 30 years experience working in government. The fact that two different ministries can get their act together is sometimes a huge surprise. But I worked long enough with the government to know, and I worked with the media. And at times I had events with the media that we had to be a bit strict about things. People were always sure there was some politician behind it. They surprisingly never got involved. They were actually concerned that the media would think they're trying to get involved, and usually they were not pleased if we would do things that we were regulating, and if at times media were not pleased with things that we had done, the politicians would get pretty, they were edgy about it. So in this particular case, it's not so much Netanyahu trying to control the media, as people are claiming, but more trying to correct something that has been very wrong with the government-owned media station for quite a long time.
In what way?
Well, Israel, as few people know or remember, has socialist roots. For up until 1977, it was very much a socialist country, meaning government did control a lot of governmental bodies. Like many European countries, by the way, Israel has a national or a state-owned media station. This is something acceptable in Europe. Americans aren't familiar with this, but in Europe, it's France too, for example, is there are German stations. BBC is actually a state-owned station. So Israel has something very similar. It was called Channel 1 for many years, the IBA, the Israel Broadcast Association. And like many other things that were run by socialists, you had a lot of things that were not acceptable, and in many ways they brought down the ability of the station not only to work independently, but more importantly, to work effectively.
And that's what's part of what's going on right now.
Well, you know, when you have a government-owned anything, that means what's funding it. They're not making money on their own. They don't have commercials. They operate based on our taxpayers' money. And so if for a very long time people didn't think about it, the fact that you're paying taxes for something and then there's a lot of waste, I think it's not only the responsibility, I think the government is obligated to take a look into this and see what can be done. Now here comes into effect the socialist background we talked about. Here you have the unions. The unions were protective of employees. You had a situation where a lot of employees not only were up to date on doing things the technology has changed over the years. And you have a lot of media personalities and technicians, etc., who made no effort to update themselves. So not only are they not effective, in many cases you had people who didn't even show up for work, yet they're on the payroll. So the first obligation of the government was to make this more effective, to stop, they were literally bleeding money. So you want to stop that bleeding money because it's an obligation of the government. So you had to find out, and they had several committees that investigated, identified where the problems were, and what the government is doing now is implementing the decisions of those committees.
So what is driving this entire campaign of allegations against the government, in your view?
Well, that's the whole thing. What's driving it, it's not against the government in general. It's in particular because of the animosity that a lot of people feel against Netanyahu and his government. And then I know the New York Times are very vocal about this. They had an article in it. If they have a correspondent here in Israel, and as far as I remember, they do have a correspondent here, I find it rather surprising, puzzling that that person would not know and in some way would try to mislead the readers by letting them believe that Israel is not a democracy and there is no freedom of press. That in some ways is worse than anything the government may be trying to do, because the government has interests. Journalists are supposed to be free of those interests. And therefore, if they're trying to push this, basically what they're doing here is very much what the New York Times has been doing for a long time, is to smear the state of Israel, to leave the impression that Israel is not a democracy and that the government is trying to take over the control over the media. You have here more expression of a variety of opinions, I believe, than any other country in the world. The government does not get involved at any level. What we're talking about in particular right now is a state-owned, and they're not trying to shut it down. They're trying to make it more effective. But it's surprisingly the same organizations here in Israel that are worried about Netanyahu and what he supposedly is doing with the channel, the national television. These are the same people who are very much opposed to a free an independent newspaper. These are precisely the same people that just a year ago were trying to shut down a newspaper that they felt was supportive of Netanyahu, a paper that's being distributed free to the public here, Israel Hayom. And these are the same people, including politicians, who were in favor of a law to block them, and nobody spoke about a threat to democracy at that time. These are the same people here who are crying now bloody murder that Netanyahu is trying to affect the media with the changes he's trying to do with this Israel television.
The Gaza Strip has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, and now Gazan graduates from the coastal enclave are being forced to pick fruit to earn a living. 80% of the population in the Gaza Strip is dependent on aid, and Palestinian graduates from the area are now finding work on summer farms to make a much-needed income. 25-year-old Ramzi Youssef is a business graduate from Gaza University, but he says with bleak employment prospects in the coastal enclave, he has yet to find a full-time job.
وطبعا حكينا لناس كتير المعنيين في هذا الأمر أنه نتوظف نشتغل، خاصة أنا وأغلب الشباب اللي بيشتغلوا هان معايا، مش واحد ولا اثنين، بدي أحكي لك معظمهم كلهم متخرجين. الصحافة والإعلام والحقوق أغلبهم متخرجين ونفس حالاتي. وغير هيك في كذا واحد هان معايا من اللي طلبوا إنه كانوا يحاولوا إنهم يسافروا وما تمكنوش على بلاد برا على أساس إنهم إيش يشتغلوا هناك.
Local farm owner Abed Shamla claims that seasonal fruit picking is a good way for young graduates to support themselves.
بغير موسم التين مثلا او موسم العنب، يعني عنده مثلا الشاب هذا اليوم هيو مثلا بقطف تين وبيعبي تين، لقيت كمان ساعتين ثلاثه بروح يبيع تين فيقف في السوق وبيع تين وبيع برضه بيجيب عنب وببيع عنب في عندنا في السوق. فهذا هو الاستغلال اللي بيقدر يستغله الشباب الخريجين في الموسم اللي هو عنب والتين.
In the last 6 years, 3 wars have broken out between Israel and Gaza's Hamas Islamist rulers. The results have been devastating to the Gazan people, because the wars have destroyed the Strip's infrastructure and paralyzed Gaza's ability to export and produce for the domestic market. Israel and Egypt maintain a naval blockade on Gaza out of fear that Hamas will import materials used to attack their countries. While the blockade has proved successful in preventing much of the cross-border smuggling of weapons, it has had a tragic impact on the livelihood of local Gazans, who are unable to easily leave the Gaza Strip to find work.
هي حالة خريج ما فيش شغل، واحد بيتخرج وبدرس وبيتعلم وبيدفع مصاري في الآخر عشان ما لاقيش شغل. طبعا لما ما لاقيش شغل نلجأ شغلات زي هذه، بيكون في عنا أرض عنب تيم نيجي نبيع فيها ونترزق منها.
Today, there are 1.9 million people living in the Gaza Strip, and 43% of them are unemployed. While Hamas blames Israel and Egypt for poor living conditions in the Gaza Strip, just last week Israel discovered that a major US-based aid organization was funneling aid money to Hamas fighters instead of Gazan civilians. The Gaza representative for the Christian Relief Fund World Vision admitted to having transferred over $7 million a year to Hamas's military wing, instead of to local Gazans in need of financial assistance. Now Israel is beginning to further investigate if aid money coming into the Gaza Strip is actually going to those in need. There's nothing more stressful than waiting for help to arrive during an emergency. Today we depend on ambulances and the police when we're in need, but imagine we could get immediate help from the passerbys around us. It turns out that's actually possible thanks to a new Israeli app called Musketeer. Joining us in the studio today is retired IDF Colonel Shaul Avidov, who founded this life-saving app. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, to begin, can you tell us about this app? It sounds amazing.
Well, Musketeer actually is a worldwide community of people that are ready to help people that are in distress or need help nearby, and of course to get help if something, God forbid, is going to happen to them. That's the basic thing we're doing.
So what's amazing about this is it provides immediate help for you if you need it, and also you can you can become a hero, right?
That's
that's really cool. So where did you get this idea from? How did you come up?
The idea came about 3 years ago when I heard about this terrible rape of 2 young women just outside the full nightclub. Knowing just if someone inside the club would know what's going on about 30 meters from there, someone would do something instantly. Knowing that, I started to look and seek for apps in time of distress to see what's out in the market today. And I was surprised to find a lot of apps exactly for this kind of event. But then I learned that all these systems, apps that are out today are doing exactly the same. They call your parents, some of them on your contact list, or maybe a dispatch, but none of them are really beside you when you need help.
Right, so if somebody's 30 miles away from you, how's that going to help you?
Yeah, and then I said to myself, okay, but I didn't know back then how, but I know that if someone nearby, because there are always people nearby, and that's our first assumption. In time of distress, the first help will come for a person nearby. He just needs to know that something is going on in his area. So that's what we started to do about 3 years ago. And today, Musketeer is really a worldwide community. People all over the world are downloading the app, joining the Musketeer community. And by doing that and installing the app on their smartphone, they can do two things. They can, of course, get help if something going to happen to them, and on the other side they can become heroes. They're going to get a notification if someone in their area is going to be in trouble. They will get the opportunity to give a hand to help him, and of course the greatest thing of all, maybe to save life.
Now, how are police and medical personnel responding to this? Is it something that's getting in their way necessarily, the fact that a passerby could get involved and help out, or is this actually having a greater impact overall on our economy?
That's
as a
the
whole?
thing. That's the thing that the world is going. Everyone is talking today about two things. One is crowdsourcing, and the other thing is shared economy. Everything we do today is with crowdsourcing, with people nearby. Or you can get a taxi cab, let's say with Uber instantly, and you can ask people where to go, how to navigate, or where to eat. But the only place we didn't get in with crowdsourcing about people helping people, and we are going there. And the police are starting in Israel, of course, and now we're going worldwide. But the police are starting to understand that there are always going to be civilians first in the scene. Now let's connect to them. Let's get data from them. And we are always waiting about 15 minutes for the first ambulance to arrive, the first policeman, well, maybe the firefighters. But that's the main 15 important minutes that always going to be a first responder can do one or two things without really knowing, having, the official knowledge about what to do, but he can really save lives. So that's what we're trying to do. It's exactly like shouting help in the street. People hear it and can respond and can say, hey, I'm not going to help because I have my own reasons. But up to now in Israel, every emergency call, people respond immediately, and lots of life was saved really instantly.
Can you tell us about some success stories?
Yes, we had lots of them, but just to give you, it started when one story is this woman that her 4-year-old child was lost in this huge shopping center. And she just pressed musketeer, and people from all around, because Israel is full, started to look for him. And he just went to the car in the parking lot. But someone saw him. That's something that can happen worldwide. It can happen instantly everywhere. We had someone that got a heart attack 3 weeks ago. Got a heart attack. He couldn't speak even. He just pressed the button. 27 people and about 1 kilometer got the call. 7 of them responded immediately and went into his house, and they found him unconscious and saved his life. We had this 15-year-old boy who fell from his horse. He was badly injured. He called his father, and father asked, "Where are you?" And he said, "I don't know." So father told him, "Press the musketeer button, I installed for you." And he presses the button, and these 2 guys worked in a field about 300 meters from him, arrived. They would never know that 300 meters from them there's this 15-year-old boy which is injured. So really it's going to provide you help instantly wherever you are. You can be in the city, maybe in Los Angeles, and you can go wherever you are in the United States, and people are going to respond. You're going to board and come to Israel, it's going to be Israeli. So wherever you are, this community, which is going bigger and bigger every day, will have first responders which really wants to help in making the world a better and safer place.
This is amazing. Now, where can we access this app? It's available in Israel, I understand, also
all
in the
over the
United
world.
States?
All over the world. It's open, of course, for Android and for iOS and iPhone, okay? So really, you can download it.
I want to download this right afterwards. I mean,
So
really,
first of all, go ahead and really, you can download it everywhere. Everyone that wants to start this community, wherever he lives, in his neighborhood or whatever, in the school maybe, kindergartens, or wherever he can just start downloading the app, tell his friends, build where he lives or where he works, this community of people from word to mouth, because it's free. Everyone wants his family to have it. And of course, for his reason, maybe to get help or maybe to provide help.
Do you have any types of directions for specific cases? Because, let's say somebody gets hit by a car and falls to the ground. I understand that you're not supposed to necessarily help them up until somebody with serious medical experience can, check if there's something wrong with their spine.
Well, we learned that people are very, very wise. So people know what their capabilities are. Someone that doesn't know anything about what to do, he will be the one that calls the ambulance services.
Got it.
But someone needs to do that. And maybe if you are in a car accident and you're badly injured, you can't do it. But people around can do it. Maybe when you press the button, we had this event about a month ago in Herzliya. A 12-year-old girl collapsed because of she got epileptic attack. And someone it was at 7:30 in the morning, someone who drove the car saw her on the street, and he pressed musketeer. 4 people responded. One of them was a medical guy, a paramedic, which just was in a cafe, in a cafe around, in a coffee shop, and he was there immediately. So really, even if you don't have or you don't know exactly what to do, maybe you're going to be the one that press and ask for help, and it's going to arrive instantly.
Well, it looks like you guys are making the world a much safer place. Congratulations. I'm going to download this afterward, and I think our viewers probably should as well. It seems like the right choice to make for your own safety and well-being. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say that Israel is a land of milk and honey for a reason, so today's word is yevul, which means harvest in Hebrew. Israel may be a tiny country, but it's lush with fruit and vegetable fields, and the yevul is so big over here that Israel even produces 95% of its own food requirements. Want to hear the craziest thing of all? Only 20% of Israel's land area is naturally farmable, and more than half of the country is made up of desert, but somehow Israelis have found a way to make a harvest out of the Holy Land. Best of all, Israel has even created tons of new fruits and vegetables on the market, like everyone's favorite cherry tomato. So if you're looking for a tasty natural snack, just head to the Holy Land. And it doesn't even matter what time of year, because there's always a tasty yevul to look forward to. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Wednesday is expected to be partly cloudy with a high of 88 degrees. The sun should come back out on Thursday with a high of 87. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.82 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.